and I'm getting emotional because there's so much hate out there for people who get abortions or have gotten an abortion. I only had one, but I can't tell everyone. And so it was so nice that they didn't treat me like an alien, that they didn't treat me like an imbecile or an idiot or like I was young and dumb. And I really appreciate that so much. So shouts to Planned Parenthood. The Deep Closet. You are listening to The Deep Closet. My name is Siren, and today I'm going to share why I feel like I should have lied about my abortion. So I was 27 years old, and my boyfriend at the time, we'll call him Mark. Mark was 31. We were living in Brooklyn and Crown Heights. I had moved into his home. Now, it wasn't really his home, it's his grandmother's home. But I moved in because we had an agreement that the two of us would be looking for an apartment together. So that's why I ended up living with him and his grandmother. It was supposed to be only for a few months as we looked for an apartment, but obviously that never happened. That's another story. But I was 27, Mark was 31. We were dating for about 3 years. It was over 3 years at this point. I was working two jobs and babysitting, and he also already had a kid. I think at that time his kid was maybe 13 or 14 years old, something like that. Anyway, so here we go. Let's get into it. My period was late, and when your period is late, you don't freak out right away. At least I didn't freak out right away because sometimes our periods come late and you might just need to wait a little while, wait a week, and eventually it shows up. So when my period was late, I did not freak out. Um, I was also in the middle of rehearsals for a show in New York, and I was just really busy and I had a lot to focus on. What I just want to say right now, since we're on this part of the story, at that time I didn't um, freak out right away. But to everyone listening, if your period is late and you are sexually active, it does not hurt to just go get a pregnancy test right away. Even if you think you're not pregnant, um, which I totally understand. But if you are sexually active, just it doesn't hurt. Just go get that pregnancy test. Just find out right away. What I didn't realize was the moment that I conceived the child, the moment I got pregnant, happened right after my last period. So while I'm waiting for my next period to come, that's already almost a month later that I was pregnant and I didn't know it. And I'm still waiting for my period to show up, thinking, oh, it's just late, not knowing that I'm already almost a month pregnant instead of finding out the answer right away. So that's not what I did. I waited even longer because number one, I was busy, but number two, I expected my period to come. I didn't think anything of it. Um, so I just assumed it'll come later. A couple of weeks go by, and my period is still late. So one day after rehearsal, or one day during rehearsal, I called Mark and I asked him to pick me up from rehearsal and bring a pregnancy test because I needed to know an answer right away. Because by this time, I'm starting to wonder if I am indeed pregnant. So he comes by my rehearsal. everyone, he came a little late, which was kind of okay because everyone else left and I was waiting for him, and I found out I was pregnant right there in the bathroom at Ripley Greer Studios. Now, for all the artists out there, especially those in New York, you guys know where Ripley Greer Studios is. So that's where I found out I was pregnant, in the bathroom. Once I figured out that I was pregnant, then follows all the conversations, the questions, the planning ahead. Do we go left? Do we go right? What if this? What if that? It takes a long time to work through these conversations with Mark. Number one, because I am very detail oriented. Like, I want to know all the details. I want to know, if we make this decision, what's going to happen? What do we need to be prepared for? If we make that decision, what's going to happen? What do we need to be prepared for? And I was really drilling it. I was really trying to stretch Mark's mind and find out what's the right decision to make for the both of us. Once I'm having these conversations, obviously I tell my parents, we tell Mark's parents as well. And I was really shocked by my father's reaction. I called him. I was alone at Mark's house. Listen, you guys, Mark and I were sharing a bedroom. We were sharing his bedroom. And Mark is a figure model. He likes to be seen. He has so many clothes. None of my clothes fit in any of the closets, any of the drawers. My clothes were in a suitcase on the floor. I lived out of a suitcase on the floor for months and months and months and months when I was living with him. So I say all that to say, when I called my dad, I think Mark was at work, and no, Mark was not at work. Mark was in the bedroom. I went into the bathroom so I could call my dad and tell my dad that I was pregnant. And I'm in the bathroom and I'm crying, and my dad, he's like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I told him I'm pregnant, and he goes, "Okay." He goes, "Well, why are you crying?" And I said, "I don't know." And I was really shocked by my father's his reaction. I don't know. I guess I just assumed that he was going to be upset with me, that he was going to think that I was irresponsible or whatever. I just assumed that it was going to go bad. And so that's why I was crying when I told him. And honestly, the way the media works, they tell us everywhere, all over the media, especially in movies and all sorts of things. They make you feel like if you're having a child in your 20s or at a young age, which 27, looking back on it, is not too young to have a child, but that's how I felt. And I thought that it was a bad thing because that's what all the movies tell me. If you're not married, they say that you're not supposed to be having children. So I just felt bad. I felt guilty. Anyway, my father was like, "Everything is going to be okay. Don't cry." And I really appreciated that. That was a really nice moment between my father and I. And shout out to my dad, because he also kept it a secret, even to this day, from everyone else in the family. Everyone else on my father's side, no one knows that I was pregnant. So shout out to my dad. I love him. He did that for me. He did that because he knew I didn't want that information everywhere. But anyway, I was also shocked at how dumb and irresponsible Mark was. I was really frustrated because I just didn't like how he was acting. I asked him, I was like, "Did you not expect me to get pregnant? Like, what did you think was going to happen?" I knew that there was a huge possibility that I could get pregnant. We were having sex unprotected for 3 years. For over 3 years, we were having unprotected sex. I knew one day I could possibly end up pregnant. And, when I said that to him, he kind of just got quiet. But I'm like, why are you not thinking? Like, of course you had to have thought this. Like, but I don't know. He just acted like he ain't never think that there was no possibility that I could get pregnant, that this is all coming out of left field and he's not prepared. And like, I get it. I wasn't prepared either, but I was aware. Anyway, I was just really upset by that. Um, and me probing him and questioning him and trying to ask him, what should we do? What do you want? Do you want this? Do you want that? If this happens, what happens if this going to happen? And blah blah blah. So all of that probing definitely pushed him to his limit. And I remember he shouted out loud, "I don't want to have another baby." And that's his answer. I respect his answer, and I'm thankful that he said that, because I needed a clear answer, which is why I was asking so many questions. I needed a clear, definite answer on how he felt about this entire situation, because a lot of guys are not clear. A lot of guys have, it's not easy for them to be clear and to think in that way. But yeah, he bursted out and he said that he did not want to have another baby. And I said, okay. I was turned off by it. I was turned off by it. I wanted to have a kid with someone who wants to have a kid. I didn't want to feel like I was going to be doing everything alone. Now, of course, I didn't think that I was financially ready to have a kid at that time, but I wasn't scared. I knew that my family would help. I knew that his family would help. But to tell you guys the truth, family, extended family, grandmas, grandpas, aunts, uncles, they don't take the place of a mother or a father in a child's life. I mean, a lot of children have been raised by other family members and they turned out absolutely fine. But deep in that kid's heart, they're always going to wonder why their parent, why their mother or their dad was not there and someone else had to raise them. Whether it's the parent's fault or not, it's going to be a void in that kid's heart when someone else raises them besides their biological mother or father. And that made me really sad to think about when it came to my own child, especially because I thought that life would go different for me, because I thought that if I did end up pregnant, that it would be okay, that Mark was going to be down for it because of the actions that we both were taking. And I was surprised to find out that that wasn't true. Everything that I thought in my head wasn't true. Yes, I was naive. I admit that. I was naive. And I really, really thought that Mark was the guy for me for forever. I knew he was the father to my kids before I even got pregnant. Like, that's how I saw him in my eyes. And I was wrong. Mark was my first boyfriend. I wasn't a virgin. I mean, I did have friends with benefits throughout my life before I met Mark. But when I met Mark, he was my first boyfriend. He was my first official boyfriend that I brought home to meet my parents and meet my dad. And it was, I guess it was, I don't want to say it was a big deal, but it was. It was an important moment for my family to see me come home with a man. um, and so because that was my first boyfriend, I I didn't pay attention to a lot of the red flags. I didn't know to pay attention. I mean, I felt some of the red flags, but I kind of just brushed on past it because I thought he was my forever guy. Some of the red flags were, he never wanted to attend Thanksgiving or Christmas with my dad's side of the family. I kept telling him, like, you have to spend one of the holidays with my father's side of the family, because my father's side of the family is a huge family. There's a lot of men on my father's side. There's also a lot of women. It's a huge family. My dad is the baby of 11. So, there's just a big family. And I kept asking him to spend one of the holidays with my father's side, and he never did. He never did. I never understood why. I didn't even realize that he was avoiding it. I just kind of thought maybe it just hadn't happened yet, but he was avoiding it. And he was probably scared of all those men in my life, which he should have been, which is why I wanted him to come. So there you go. But yeah, so that was a red flag. He was also a cheater, you guys. He cheated all the time. He he was a chronic cheater. He and I had made an agreement at one point that he would go get therapy. He did go get therapy. That did help him a lot. But then he stopped therapy. He went back to cheating again. Um, that was the whole thing. So I guess that was definitely a red flag that I don't know. Man, it's hard saying this stuff out loud because I'm realizing how naive I was. But like I mentioned before, he's a model. He likes to pose naked in front of the world. He works at visual arts school, so he's a figure model. He would pose naked, and the students would paint him or draw him or create sculptures out of him, as for their class. But that was something that he liked to do. If you walk into his bedroom, he had naked pictures of himself all over his bedroom. I don't even know how I stayed there, how I lived there for so long. It just really there was no space for me. But that's the kind of guy he was. He liked to be seen. Um he wanted to be in the spotlight, and I didn't pay attention to any of those signs. I didn't know any better. What's also really surprising to me with going through this experience is that I spoke to my mom, I spoke to Mark's mom, and they both had abortion stories. And I started to do research and ask around only to those that I felt super comfortable with, because you can't go around telling everybody that you're thinking about having an abortion. Some people do not agree with that. But the people that I did feel close with, I did tell them. And I was surprised at how there were so many women. Almost every woman that I asked, they all had stories of abortion in their life. And I was just really shocked because no one talks about this. And I remember feeling like, how come no one ever speaks about this like openly, when this sort of knowledge, this sort of community can be so helpful for someone like me who's feeling lost and confused, because how did I end up here when I thought it was going to go so differently? So it was really nice to hear all those stories from all those women who opened up to me. And if you're listening, I would just encourage you, share your story, because there's healing in these stories, which is why I'm sharing mine. But yeah, I was so shocked. The information was super helpful, and I was just saddened by the fact that no one talks openly about these things. Um, I also found out that my grandmother was raped, and it's a possibility that my mom's dad isn't who we all thought her dad was. But we will not find that answer, because those answers have gone with my grandmother to the grave. My grandmother on my mother's side, she didn't like to talk about the past. It brought up so much pain for her, and there is a lot that I don't know. And that's why I feel like we need to share these stories. So anyway, after all that research, and finding out all these things about myself and my own life and my own history, I decided to have the abortion. Um, and making this decision, I sent prayers to my unborn baby. I realized that this baby came to me to help me make a decision about how I want to live the rest of my life. If I sent my baby back to heaven, I knew that I had to make a promise that would change my life, change how I live, how I'm approaching my goals. I felt like my unborn baby and I made a deal in heaven before either of us came to earth, before I was born. We made a deal, my child and I, that when they would pop up in my life, that would be a moment for me to make a decision about how I wanted to live the rest of my life. And I do believe that we had a soul contract that when we crossed paths on earth, that would mean that I would either choose to be awakened or stay asleep. And I said that if I send my baby back to heaven, I have to wake up. I have to change my life. And that's what I did. At this point, I was pushing 2 months. I wasn't 2 months yet, but I was close to 2 months pregnant because of the time that it took for me thinking that I wasn't pregnant and my period was just late. That took some time. And then finding out I was pregnant, and then what am I going to do? Am I going to go left or right? That took some time. And then you have to schedule your abortion. I had to remember I told you guys that I was in the middle of rehearsals for a show, so I wanted to schedule the abortion for after the show was over because I didn't know how I would react. I'd never been in this position before, so that took some extra few days, maybe a week or something. So by this time that I was scheduled to get the abortion, I was almost 2 months pregnant. And I remember that if I had hit the 2 month mark, I was not going to be allowed to have an abortion anymore. I think that's what it was. At least that's how I understood it in my own head. But I'm pretty sure that, I don't know, by law or something, I don't think Planned Parenthood would give me an abortion after I hit the 2 month mark. And if that isn't true, I'm glad that's the that's the deadline that I put in my own head. I just didn't want to wait too long. Like that's not what this is about. So anyway, so I go to Planned Parenthood. Everyone was so nice, and I felt like there was no judgment in that room, in the entire space. This was the Planned Parenthood right by the Brooklyn Bridge on the Brooklyn side. It's like when you exit the bridge and you make a right. It's over there near Court Street, but not as far down as like where the movie theater is and the Trader Joe's. It ain't that far down. But anyway, so this Planned Parenthood, everyone was so nice to me and talked to me like a human being and looked me in my eyes when I would speak to them about my situation. And I just really, really appreciate that. That goes so far, and I'm getting emotional because there's so much hate out there for people who get abortions or have gotten an abortion. I only had one, but I can't tell everyone. And so it was so nice that they didn't treat me like an alien, that they didn't treat me like an imbecile or an idiot or like I was young and dumb. And I really appreciate that so much. So shouts to Planned Parenthood. I gotta catch my breath. So I went to Planned Parenthood and everyone was nice. Mark was with me. He waited in the waiting room. So I walk into the room and they lay me down on the hospital bed and they tell me that they're going to give me fentanyl. And I said, wait. I said, isn't that what killed Prince? And they all kind of giggled and they were like, well, we're not going to give you that much. And I was like, oh Lord, they're gonna tell me, they're gonna give me fentanyl. Princeton died. Now they got me sitting in here. So that was just a funny little cute moment that brought some life to the room, you know. There were three people in the room with me. There was the main doctor, there was the main doctor's assistant, and then there was a younger girl who she felt like an intern or something. I don't, but she was strictly there to be with me so that I wouldn't be alone, and that was really nice. She held my hand the whole time, and she was really, really sweet and telling me that I had a right to make the decision that I was making, and that my choice is valid, and that I was strong. And she was saying so many encouraging things that was just so sweet and very much needed. And she was holding my hand because I was squeezing. I was squeezing her hand hard because the procedure was very uncomfortable. The um so obviously you can look up how abortions work, but the procedure that I was getting was like the suction tube procedure, and they put this giant tube inside of you, and they shove it all the way up your canal, and they turn it on, and it sucks out um, the fetus. Um, anyway, this big old machine was very uncomfortable. I mean, it's a machine. And it was all the way up there, and it was quite uncomfortable. There was even a moment when I was like telling the doctor that I wanted to push down on my stomach because it made some of the pressure go away, and the doctor like said okay, but then when I started pushing, they was like, okay, no, don't do that because I don't want you to push the machine out. But it was just very uncomfortable. Okay, so the procedure is over. Um, I go back out into the waiting room. Mark called a cab for me. I was really tired. And so we went back to the house, and I took a nap, and he stayed up and played video games. Now, when I woke up from my nap, I got a text from a friend reminding me about his play that night. I didn't want to let my friend down. I did promise my friend that I would be at this play. That was before I realized that I was going to have my abortion that day. But after my nap, I felt good. I felt like I could go out. I figured I'll be okay. It's just a play. I'm going to be sitting the whole time. So I won't be walking around everywhere. So I thought that I could just handle sitting through a play. So I decided to go, and Mark went with me. And we get to the play. The play is cool. We watch the whole thing. While I'm watching the play, I am cramping up a little bit, but I was okay. I pushed through. And then the show is over. And after the show's over, I wait for my friend to come out of the dressing room, and I'm like, hey, we hug, we take pictures, ha ha ha. And then my friend was like, let's go to a bar. And I was like, I don't think I'm gonna go. I'm not feeling too good today. And Mark is right there. Mark hears everything that I'm saying. And so I was like, I'm not feeling good today. And then he was like, you okay? You sure? I was like, yeah, my period just started, which was a lie. That, like, obviously my period didn't just start, but that was the only excuse that I could come up with that was sort of related to what I was going through without telling him the truth. So I was like, yeah, my period just started. I'm crampy. I think I want to go home. And do you know what Mark, that's why my subconscious said give him the name Mark, his Mark ass. This mother, He gonna look at me in the eye after he heard me tell my friend that I don't feel good, my period just started. He gonna look at me and say, "No, come on, let's go out. Let's go get a beer, just one beer. Come on, let's go. Come on, please, come on." And I'm like, that right there, it set me off. I was so pissed because I'm like, you know exactly what I went through. You know exactly what I had to do today because of your ass. And he gonna talk about, no, let's go, like a kid. And I was just upset. I was so upset. I knew I couldn't say anything because it would turn into an argument and it would be a scene right here in front of all these people. So I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to embarrass my friend. My friend felt good. They just had a performance. So I just said, okay. And I don't remember. I don't remember what happened at the bar, to be honest. I remember sitting at the bar and that's it, because I think I might have blocked it out of my mind because I just really didn't want to be there. I wanted to go home. But when that happened, that's how I knew. I knew right then and there that Mark was not the guy for me. He just wasn't. He's going through the motions of what he think he should do as a boyfriend, but there's no heart in it. There's no care. He doesn't really care. And that's what turned me off. Now, a few days later was Thanksgiving. So I went to Mark's mother's house for Thanksgiving, and his parents were aware that I just had an abortion. And while dinner was being prepared, I felt a little crampy and I went to the bathroom. Now, when I'm in the bathroom and I pull my pants down, I could see clumps of what looked like giant blood clots just in my panties. And I don't know, I don't know, my instincts or something just made me touch it. I was like, let me pick it up. And I picked up these, what I thought were blood clots. And it wasn't blood clots. It felt like flesh. It was flesh. And holding it in the palm of my hand, it was red, but it wasn't bloody. It was flesh, and when you touch it, it felt like if you were to put your fingertips and rub it across the palm of your hand, that's the way this flesh felt. It was flesh. That's the only thing I can say. And I was just like, wow, like this is part of my unborn baby. So I cracked the bathroom door and I called for Mark and I asked him to bring me a plastic bag. And he was pouty, like he didn't want to do it. Like finding me a plastic bag was such a big task. Like he was being immature. Like he don't even know what's going on with me. Or he should know what's going on with me, but he don't care. And I don't know, I was pissed. Anyway, he brings me back a plastic bag. I open the plastic bag, there's trash in it. I said, can you find me an empty plastic bag, please? Because what he don't know is I need to use the plastic bag to put in my bloody, soiled underwear so that I can take my dirty clothes home. But he's not thinking. He's not even asking if I'm okay. He doesn't care. He was very immature. I couldn't stand it. I stood in the bathroom angry and alone. And it really hit me at that moment that here I was alone in a house full of people. I wasn't close with them. Mark and I wasn't even in love anymore. And I felt like I was the only one suffering the consequences of me getting pregnant. And it wasn't fair. It wasn't even like my fault. And that's another thing. Women are always looked at like it's our fault that we got pregnant. I genuinely thought that I was doing something together with my boyfriend at the time. I thought that we were going to do this together, and I was wrong. Anyway, it wasn't fair. And I got myself together, and all I could think was that I should have lied about my abortion. I should have lied about how I was going to pay for the abortion because my health insurance paid for the entire abortion. I didn't have to come out of my pocket for a penny. And because I was standing there in that bathroom alone, going through this whole thing alone, holding this flesh in my hand alone, and no one cared, that made me feel like I was the only one losing anything. I was losing a life, and it felt like Mark didn't lose anything. And I genuinely at that moment felt like I should have lied and told Mark that he had to pay for the abortion. Because in my mind at the time, I felt like he needed to lose something. And if all it could be was money, then at least he lost some money so that we both could feel like we lost something together. I was thinking back on it now. I was grieving, and I felt like I was the only one grieving. And I didn't like that because I was not the only one that got me into this situation. So yeah, my thinking told me that I should have lied about the money and made him pay. I should have opened the bathroom door and threw the flesh in his face. I was just so upset by his nonchalant attitude. Obviously, we broke up very soon after all of this. But what this taught me was that we need to help each other. We need to spread the knowledge, and we need to share our stories. It brought me a lot of comfort knowing that there were other women that I looked up to who had similar stories. It made me feel less alone. And I learned that no matter how obvious a relationship can look, you still have to talk about having a child with your partner. Don't assume that they want exactly what you want just because the relationship seems to be going very well. It was so obvious that I might end up pregnant, but he wasn't thinking that way at all. At all. I learned about myself. I learned what is super important to me, and that was moving forward in a new way, pursuing my dreams in a more concentrated and focused way. I couldn't send my baby away and just keep doing the same. I had to make a change. I had to make that child's life mean something. And what it meant for me was that I need to go hard and follow my dreams if I'm not going to have a child right now. And that's exactly what I did. I learned to cherish all the moments with our elders and to ask questions while they're here, because my family will never know the truth about my mom's dad or and my grandmother's secret of being raped. So if your elders are still in your life, use this time now to get close with them. Ask them questions about how they grew up. Do a family tree with your family. Find out who is everybody's mama and daddy. And most of all, I learned that I want to have a baby with a man who also doesn't already have a child, so that we can have our first kid together and experience being first time parents at the same time, so that we can be one unit, so we can equally put as much love into our kid, so we can be on the same page. I learned to speak up about my hopes and dreams in a relationship first, sharing my intentions when I'm dating so there's no confusion. I learned what I want in my next relationship thanks to the contrast of learning what I don't want. So, thanks, Mark. What your Mark ass. Thank you for listening. My name is Siren, and this is The Deep Closet.